All right, well, welcome. I'm going to go in the first part slowly, just in case there's sort of people still joining, but welcome to tonight's workshop webinar.
Recording in progress.
To call it. Can it might just get everyone just to go on mute. I can hear a bit of reverberation. I don't know whether that's me or anyone else. And so tonight, and I hope for this to be more of an ongoing event or ongoing type of event, I should say. And tonight, we're looking at how to deepen your Reiki practice, and I'll get into that just in a little bit. Let me just, I can still see people joining, so I might just wait a minute or so. So if you're here and you're sort of sitting in the background, probably now's a good time to put your camera on, I would say. Hi, Carol. Right. Just wait another minute or so, and before I sort of launch into it. Let's just sort of see cameras coming on. I guess the very first thing that I want to do is really set the space for us tonight. And before I start anything, the very first thing I want to do is really begin with an acknowledgement of country. And so I know that there are many of us here, and we are on many different lands. So I'm not going to be able to acknowledge the lands where every one of us are. But I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet at this moment. And I pay my respects to the elders past and present. And I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people here today. So wherever you are, have that sort of silent acknowledgement for yourself, and know the land we have and the footprint we have is precious. Now I'm going to start sharing my screen. So you'll get to see my very busy workspace. All right, can everyone see that okay? Give me a couple of thumbs up if you can see the screen. Great, thanks, Leonie. Okay, so it's a really interesting title that we have tonight that we're going to be looking at. But I guess okay. Before we actually start, some of you may know me, and before we jump into the agenda, I guess just a little bit about me. My name is Debra Fidler, Deb, and I'm on the board of Reiki Australia. One of my passions sits with how I can be, me personally, can be of service to others on this journey that we call life. And like all of us here tonight, I juggle many roles, from carer, mother, therapist, practitioner, teacher. And I think we all probably juggle very, very sort of similar roles. But this webinar is not about me, it's actually about you. And the purpose is what a deepening of a Reiki practice might look like. So if I look at what that is, here we go. So I guess, first of all, this is not a webinar about specific to deepen your practice, because when you do that, you deepen that part of your practice, through the doing, through mentoring, and through the Reiki share practice. That's where that aspect comes from. But what I would like to do with you tonight is explore ways that you can learn more about yourself, ways to reflect on experiences with others, ways to learn and make sense of thoughts and emotions. And there's a reason for that. We all work very broadly in what I personally call, the allied health sector. Sometimes we have clients that are straightforward, and sometimes there's complexities. Sometimes we can be triggered by our clients or other people, and sometimes the reverse can happen. And in that moment of, I guess, of triggering, it's commonly called transference. But in that moment, that's when we're presented with an opportunity to learn something. So the deepening of our practice is the deepening of what I would call a reflective practice. And it's through reflection that we gain, whether it's clarity, insight, and the wisdom to navigate, our life. How many of us here, just sort of show of hands, does some sort of reflective practice at the moment? I can see some hands, which is really great. And I guess what I wanted to do was to go deeper with even what happens. So tonight we're going to cover some basics, absolutely, but there's more a reflective practice. And I was debating whether or not to do, and it'll depend on whether we have time, whether to lead through a reflective practice or reflective exercise. So we'll see how we go for time. I aim that, so after we have this reflective exercise, we'll go into some breakout rooms, because I also feel that it's in the sharing of what we're learning and doing. So I might have some ideas, but, we as an organization, we have some very experienced and talented people. And so, sometimes it's in the sharing of those ideas that we can deepen our own practice, get some additional ideas, and see where that sits with sits with each of us, personally. If we, fingers crossed, we still have time, we'll have time to go through any questions. Get a copy of the slides. I've got that ready to go. So if you want to take notes, that's great, but also know that you will get a full copy of everything that I'm going through tonight. Any questions so far? I think you're gonna have to put your hand up or something, otherwise I'm not even going to see that, I don't think. And I can't see the chat box, so.
Hi everyone. Hi, Debra.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure if it's a problem at this end, but every couple of minutes, it sounds like you're underwater.
Yeah.
Do you know what that's about?
Yes, I do. How does it sound now?
It sounds good now.
Okay, all right. Then that'll be my note to me, just to project my voice a little bit more. So
Okay.
thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for that.
All right. Thank you.
Wouldn't want to get through the whole presentation, find out that no one could hear me. So thank you.
Also, perhaps remind everybody to be on mute so there's no feedback.
Yep, that's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did notice, Deb, sometimes when you just turn a little bit away from the microphone or from facing the screen, that seems to be when it happens.
Okay, thank you. All right, so what I'll do is I'll make sure that I am also speaking directly at the microphone. How does that sound?
Sounds good right now.
Good. All right, I'll get myself a little bit closer and then we'll start. So thank you. All right, let's go. So the first part of what I want to do tonight with you is just to go through what I would call are the 10 key principles of any reflective practice. And as we're going through, it's about, and some of this I imagine that you're going to know, so I don't, a lot of it shouldn't be things that you don't know. But the reflective practice, so when we look at something even as simple as self-awareness and thoughts and feelings and actions that come up. So with that, though, there's more to it than just being self-aware. And as Reiki practitioners, all of us have a level of self-awareness. And all of us have some idea, because we're intuitive. A lot of us, I imagine, are quite intuitive in our work. And when we're intuitive, we're also very aware of what's happening in us. So there's a couple of parts to that. So the first part obviously is noticing and observing and being aware of it. But then it's what do you do? Because that's really the foundation of any reflective inquiry. The second part And there's 10 principles that we go through altogether. The second part is a critical thinking approach. We have, I liken it to, we have what we call a logical mind, we have an emotional mind. And our wise mind is what really sits between the two. It gravitates between the two. So our logical mind is the mind that is going to be that detective. It's going to question. We'll see something that happens. And so we're questioning an assumption. We're looking at the evidence. We're evaluating the arguments. And the critical thinking, and it's a balance between the two. So they're both really, really important. So we all work with a heart, and that's a heart base and a heart space. Absolutely. And when we're doing a Reiki practice, that's exactly where it should be. We don't want to engage our critical thinking or our logical mind. But if something hasn't gone to plan, and, you know, life is about the mirrors for whatever is happening, whatever we need to work on in this particular moment are always out there. And so being able to stand back and actually really critically look at it is an important factor. Third one is being open-minded. So being to whether it's new perspectives, new ideas, new feedback. I liken this sometimes to, I guess, the saying, I'm glad that you see it differently. In some organizations, and we all have so many different backgrounds, that doesn't happen, you know, that oh, I'm glad you see it differently doesn't happen. It sometimes it's quite linear, sometimes it's not. And we've all worked, I imagine, in many different environments. But the open-mindedness is how we broaden our worldview. And generally we're doing all of that through, you know, through our clients. So we can consider, you know, are there some alternatives to perhaps what we might be seeing in the moment? Being curious, in my practice, I guess it's the one thing that I sit with. So when I'm not being curious, when I don't feel that sense of curiosity around what is happening to my client in front of me, then for me, that's actually a flag. If I don't have that sense, if I'm not sitting there with going, I wonder what's going on here. I wonder what is happening. So for me, that curiosity is a key factor, because when I'm curious, everything about how I approach life, whether how I approach a client, it changes, because it's suddenly, if there are any ties to anything specific, they're not there anymore. And I'm able to, I guess, like this sort of, you know, floating basket, I'm able to sort of float around it and really look at it. So curiosity for me is a really big one, because I'm able to go, as it says there, to go underneath the surface of what we're looking at. Non-judgmental attitude. You know, it's interesting. I think here's the thing, right? I couldn't sit here and say to you that I'm completely non-judgmental, and I don't think any of us are. We have, and we bring with us a bias of some description, whether it's white privilege, whether it is something. But to say that we're completely non-judgmental, I don't think any of us actually can hand on heart do that. And sometimes I sometimes don't even think we know that we're doing it. The best I think we can do is to be aware of even random thoughts that might come up. You know, we might pass somebody and think, oh, that dress looks really terrible on them. Or, you know, there'll be really small thoughts, really small triggers, but it's awareness that is the starting point, and awareness too of whether or not it is getting in the way of us not stepping into the best version, you know, I guess, of what we can become. The sixth one is empathy, and I feel, and I can kind of even sense from the energy, just from, you know, all the beautiful people we have tonight, that's a really strong part of all of us, that sort of compassionate, empathetic approach that goes beyond sympathy, you know, that empathetic, you know, so we really sit with another person, Because if we can sit with another person and sit in their darkness, then we can also sit in our own. We're able to do that. Intentionality, it's another one. That's one we would have in all of our practices in terms of setting an intention to a Reiki practice, setting an intention to a healing, setting an intention. So we're clear on what that purpose looks like. But it's the same thing when we're having a reflective practice in terms of being clear about what that looks like, whether it's a focus of attention, but being able to really critically identify an area of growth. So going not just at the surface level, because it's beyond that. A true reflective practice will look at, okay, this is coming up for me. What is coming up? It's fear. Well, what's underneath that? Well, what's underneath that? So it's that ability to actually keep going and intentionally going deeper and asking the question, but why? But why am I feeling that? But why? And then sitting still and listening to the answers. With any reflective practice, it also requires action. So the action can be whether it's decision, whether it's changing behavior, whether it's journaling, but you can't have a reflective practice without some kind of action behind it as well. Otherwise, there's no purpose to it. Continuous learning, for me, this one kind of also flows a lot on post-curiosity. So it's a growth mindset, and I sense that probably all of us in this room tonight, that's something that when I say that we all have, it's one that we're embracing. And I see it in a lot of the chats too, you know, whether it's on Facebook or on the other community chats, where this sort of sense of support and community and this ongoing learning. It's very, you know, it's very, very evident. And it's a wonderful thing to see as well. And the final one is accountability. So that's holding ourselves accountable for our growth, holding ourselves accountable for whatever it is that might be going on with us in that moment. So the accountability, responsibility. So they're essentially the 10, what I would call the 10 key principles. There's more to it when I say more to it than that. And if I looked at, there are ways to even go deeper, but I didn't want to assume where we all were. So I thought I would start at the basic level, particularly for practitioners that are perhaps starting for the first time. Because I know that when I started really, really doing a reflective practice, it was quite different than just going at the surface level and just going on, because it's a holistic. So when we do our Reiki and when we're with a client, we're doing it holistically. We're doing it with all parts of our spirit, our mind, our heart. And our reflective process is exactly the same. For us, what I've learned myself personally is that my growth, my personal growth, has come more when I have been able to truly reflect on something that is going on in my life. Sometimes actually it hasn't necessarily been a client, but something will happen and I will feel, I tend to feel it in my body. I know, fairly attuned to my body, so I'll know that something is not right. And if it's not sitting right, I immediately start to reflect on it. Okay, what's going on? Where is that sitting? Where is it sitting in my body? And that's a practice that I hope, if we don't do it in this webinar, certainly we'll be doing it in the second webinar, the second one that we do. And it's being curious and really working with whatever is coming up and working with the different parts of self. So, you know, if we looked at the parts of us, so we have many roles, we have many parts. So we all have what I call a protector part, a part that wants to keep us safe. But sometimes that particular part is not very helpful. And not that it can get us into trouble, but it can kind of, yeah, let's just say not be helpful. All right. So what I want you to do at the moment is to grab a pen and paper. We're going to do an exercise. And what I want you to do, so you're going to have 2 columns, right? And if you've done this exercise before, just do it again. You can always learn something a little bit different from it. But what I want you to do is to think of a person who triggers you, who makes you angry, who just really, really annoys you. And I want you to write down 5 characteristics. It could be 6, it can be 7, but minimum 5 that describe that person. Okay, I'm going to give you 2 to 3 minutes to do that. My little timer. I'll give you 3 minutes. And if you need more time, we can have more time. You've got about a minute.
Are
Got
we
about a
just doing the person that makes us angry?
Yes, you are. At the moment, yes, you
Thank
are.
you. Thank you.
Simon who's just late and just written that you're late because of the time difference. Right now, what we're doing is spending a few minutes to think of a person that triggers and writing down 5 things that describe that person. Then somebody we admire and writing down 5 things that we admire, or 5 personality traits about that person too.
Yeah. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
All right. You can now move to the person that you admire and inspire. And again, it can be more than 5 characteristics. If you've got more than 5, that's okay. Just put down 2 minutes for that one. All right. How's everyone gone? Has everyone finished? Yep.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So you're wondering why we've just done that. So what I want you to now do is to cross off the names on the person that triggers you and cross off the name of the person that you admire and put your own name down. And I know that if you've never done this before, I know that it can be, when I say daunting, because you're probably looking at that list going, two things, right? You're looking at that list going, I know when I did it, for me, I think I had, I don't have in mind, I think I had definitely arrogant, because arrogant people always used to really trigger me. And then I had to sit and think, okay, so where is that in me? Angry was something that I found really, really difficult. You know, anger was something I found quite confronting. And then I had to ask myself, what is good about anger? Because there aren't any bad parts of us. There are no bad parts of us. So although there's a part of you that's probably looking, thinking, I don't like that part, this is the reflection process. This is where we go within and we go, so am I like that? Where am I like that? Am I like that? And two, on the list that inspires and admires, I know for myself that I would look at that list and I went, oh, that's not me. I can't see. And as we're human nature, right, we're always going to remember the negative. We don't remember the positive. And here I am, living proof. I cannot remember any of those positive things on that list myself. I know the person who I thought I really admired. But what I want to do now is I'm going to put you into some breakout rooms. And what I want you to, the questions that I want you to explore is, what is good about the attributes that I don't deem as positive? And how do I accept, those two questions, and how do I accept all of me, including the positive? So that's what we're now going to do. So I'm going to look for I'm going to stop sharing, I think, for a second. Share.
Oh,
Okay. Any questions so far?
yeah, Deborah, can you just repeat the
questions?
what you'd like us to do? You
Yep.
want us to go into breakout rooms and discuss what is good about the attributes that I personally don't deem as positive.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then what?
The second one was, how do I accept all of me?
Oh, it went gurgly. Sorry.
Sorry, no, that's okay. How do I accept all of me, including the positive?
Gotcha.
Yeah? Okay. Now, the breakout rooms are going to be random. So, because there's an automatic part to this, if I can get my glass. I'm just going to pause the recording while we're in the breakout room. Okay, I think that kind of looks like everybody is back. All right. Now for the sharing. So we had quite a few groups, but I'm sure there was some very interesting discussion. So I would like to share some of their thoughts or what their group was discussing.
I suppose, I'm sorry, no, you go first.
Oh, no, you go, Bess. That's wonderful.
Oh, that's all right, fine. Well, I suppose I chose somebody sort of very current at the moment, Mr. Netanyahu. And I was thinking, because I don't really have any issues with anybody terribly much at the moment, but I thought, here's the one person I wake up in the morning, I think, oh no, what's he done this time? And so I had a whole lot of things. Well, you could just imagine what I wrote down there. And then I suppose we had to, Krishna and I, and our other guest who was working with us had no voice, so we couldn't. It was only the two of us, unfortunately. So we sort of went through, how maybe we could overcome that. And basically it's gratitude.
Oh,
So
no.
when
Yeah.
you actually look at all that, well, what can you do about it? Well, absolutely nothing at the moment, but certainly you can put gratitude in there. You can put kindness by putting maybe Reiki into that situation. Yeah, and just watching what you say about this sort of thing, because basically it's totally out of our control.
And very fear-based. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right, because you see the images on TV and you see just what's happening and you think, why on earth is he doing that one person? And I suppose Putin as well, you know, why do these people get up and do that sort of thing? So, so it's, as you say, the gratitude. What can we look at with gratitude? Well, I suppose the kindness of the people who are trying to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, sometimes what helped me particularly with arrogance was to realize that it's a continuum. And at the other end of arrogance is really low self-esteem. And so, yeah. And so when I considered it that way, it enabled me to kind of look at that person quite differently, as you've just said, with a bit more compassion and to have some gratitude and to look at it differently. That's great, Bev. Thank you. Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Who else?
In our group, we were looking at, you mentioned anger, and we also talked about things like controlling behaviours. So what we know is that every emotion is actually good for us. It's there to help us take better care of ourselves. And anger means this isn't fair. So if anybody's angry, it's because on some level they feel that something hasn't been fair. And although it may trigger a fear response in us, eventually that can then turn us back into having that same anger because that wasn't fair. Controlling behaviour is driven by anxiety, because if somebody is trying to control, they're trying to control their environment, and we might just happen to be in that. And so again, that comes from fear, and it's all about understanding that anxious feeling that somebody's trying to control you with is because they don't feel safe. So again, we can look at all of that, and when it triggers us, it's because we're not feeling safe. So of course the need for that is to do what we need to do so we can feel safe. So we can look at all of those and see that we can use the negative emotions as a way to turn things around and respond to those within ourselves, so that we don't let them control us. But interestingly enough, everybody in our little group said the positives all sounded like them.
That's good. Maybe it's just me with imposter syndrome. Mind you, that was quite a few years ago. And the other thing with anger, I always get excited when someone talks about anger, because anger is vibrationally a higher emotion.
High frequency.
Yeah.
And I knew that.
Anger is the fire in the belly. It means they're going to probably far more likely to take action. So
because it's about 150 and shame's on about 30.
Yeah,
so if we can rise them up to a higher vibration,
absolutely.
then we can just a stepping stone to the next jump.
Yeah,
that's good.
Exactly. So it's all how you look at it. And sometimes with anxiety, it's that it becomes all or nothing thinking, and it's where I need to worry because it keeps me safe, but it closes off the growth mindset. So it's that continuum. Again.
And interestingly enough, it doesn't matter how much a person worries about something, unless it leads to a solution, it doesn't fix it. So you might as well stop the worrying and just get on with your life, really.
And generally with anxiety, what I notice is a whole host of other things are kind of complicated. So
True.
Makes it kind of tricky. But there's some of the clients that we have, aren't they? So
definitely.
Sort of reducing that arousal and using Reiki to kind of change their vibration. Okay. Who else had some interesting discussions happening?
With my experience, is like we, as human beings, we are going through difficult times. Sometimes as Reiki therapists, we are with stress. We are human beings, dependent. But in front of the patient, I am nurse as well, or client, we need to cover this life that we are through. And if they come in the client with aggression, anger, we are prepared to help. That's why they can reverse. It's just we are with protection, because Reiki protect us, and open to help. This is my experience. A human being, yes, from time to time we have stress, sometimes we are with aggression, but when we are just ready to help, we need to have balance and be ready to open our experience to help, and no intercept, nothing to change us. This is my experience.
Yeah, yeah, really lovely insight. Really lovely insight. Yeah, agree. Now I could see, I don't see your names, unfortunately, on the screen. So I can't kind of point down and go, oh, you go next. So just start speaking. Okay.
Okay, well, I can, I was in a group with Dana and Orla, and we each shared the characteristics of the different types. And as we discussed it, the thing that we really took from it was that for ourselves, we could see and understand how when we were in a stressed space, when we felt anxious or when we were under stress for whatever reason, we could see some of those qualities on the anger side.
Yeah.
Then, but when we were taking care of ourselves and when we were in a good space and we were giving ourselves treatments and eating well and doing all the right things, we could see that we had more of the positive qualities in ourselves. So that seemed like the obvious pathway that we all know.
Yeah, and it is, and you know, interestingly, what happens biologically, you know, to our body, is that in anger and stress and anxiety, the pathways to our thinking brain, our wisdom brain, this part of the brain, they get cut off. They literally get cut off. The limbic system and our arousal system, it's called the smoke alarm, and literally that we become aroused, and that pathway is, as I said, it's cut off. And so we have to, and that's why they often, you know, when you're talking to people that have any vigilance or high levels of anxiety, because it can happen in us, you know, often what you'll hear as tools and techniques is stop, you know, stop, breathe. Because it's in that moment where you're because what you're doing is you're helping your prefrontal cortex, that thinking part of that wisdom brain, engage. Because what's happening to us in that moment generally is our emotional brain is overriding everything. And that's completely understandable because, you know, we're all triggered, all of us, you know, me as well, we're all triggered. We can be triggered by different things. So yeah, it's a common thing, but you know, that kind of stopping, noticing, observing, and then going, and that's when you start to use some of the other tools. You know, you become curious and self-critical, like what actually, you know, am I angry? And curious about that. You know, you try and lose the judgment. Sometimes that's hard, you know, particularly when we're talking about our kids, right? Or something that's a bit closer to home. It's a bit harder to do. Sometimes it's really easy to do, and sometimes it's harder to do. But yeah, very, very, very great observation, actually. Really good. Who else would like? We've still got some time. Who else would like to share?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about acceptance for a moment, because a lot of the things on my list that were negative, I've learned to accept in someone else whose behavior over the years hasn't changed. And, you know, these are things that I looked at for many, many years and was always often confused and hurt and angered by. But then it got to a point that I had to look at it from a different angle and actually go, okay, so they're not even actually aware that they're doing this or behaving this certain way. And calling out the behavior only exacerbates the problem with that person, and they get more and more resistant to, you know, their own stuff. So it's actually just getting to that level of existence. I might not agree with some of the things they do and say, but I have learned to accept that that is part of who they are. And unfortunately, because they're someone close to me, that's something that's never going to change. And it's allowed me not to be triggered, whereas I used to be triggered all the time.
I think the other thing, to keep in mind is that with the negative characteristics, right, it's not like we are that all the time, right? I noticed, because I know that when I was doing it myself that first time, there were things that would come up, and I knew I wasn't that 100% of the time, but I knew that in certain situations, I might gravitate towards it. So it's, and when I really looked at it critically, because some of it, as I said, some of it, because I look and I think there's no way that I'm that. And then when I thought about it, I thought, oh gosh, sometimes I am, sometimes I don't mean to, but sometimes I might snap, or I might kind of turn into the person that I don't want to be. But that's how we grow, and that's how we learn. So I'm not saying that you're all those bad things on your list, but I found for me that there was bits of it in it that I could see in myself, but I could also see that I wasn't that all the time. So yeah, and it's also, I think, not seeing it as a negative, but it's saying, okay, so what is positive? What can I see? What can I say is positive about this thing? So, if we looked at, for example, for someone with black and white thinking, okay, so they don't see the gray, so they may not have insight, but the positive to that is they're decisive, right? So it's about how you reflect on it and go, okay, is there something positive? Okay, well, the positive thing in a person that has black and white thinking, they're really decisive. Not always helpful, but it's about how you can look at something perhaps a bit differently. But hard. And acceptance, I think you're right. I think acceptance for all of us, because it's that acknowledgement, and then you're absolutely right. It's definitely the acceptance part too.
And perhaps balance as well. Nathan and I talked about like inflexible thinking, like fixed thinking, and came to the conclusion that the good side of that is then if you are you've got something that you need to do, then that helps you to keep on track and not stray off on it. So that could be a positive aspect of that really rigid thinking. So we all can have a bit of that, and we did talk about that. We acknowledge that we do have a bit of that ourselves, but also that there is balance there. They're not necessarily, not that anything's bad, but it's when things get out of balance that they can become problematic, I think, as opposed to when they're a bit more in balance.
Exactly. And here's the thing that I'll stress it again. There's a book, he actually wrote, it's called No Bad Parts. And I think for many of us, we say, okay, anger is bad. So we attribute a characteristic as being bad, and it's not, right? Sometimes it's there to protect us. Sometimes it's there, has a purpose, but it's not bad. It, at the heart of it, it isn't bad. So yeah. Now I just noticed we've now, instead of going under time, we've now probably gone over time. So let me just share my screen, just to see if I can do that with some, oh, there we go. All right. There we go. Oh, yep. Okay. So unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, so I do apologize for that. But look, if you do have any burning questions, please reach out. You can reach me. I think it's marketing@reikiaustralia.com.au. And I should have timed this a bit better, so we did have a bit more time for questions. I apologize for that, but it sounds like there was some really, really interesting discussions. So, and some really great learnings there. I wanted to share that I've got some additional ones coming up. These are all things that I'm quite passionate about myself. So one is the one in June will be on self-care. So similar. And I also want to do a practice, which is a somatic practice. It's a somatic meditation where you can go deep, and you're actually it's a somatic meditation where you can actually see and feel what is coming up, and then can so it's going deeper again with what that might look like, and embracing some vulnerability. So it's kind of another step again. One of the things that I've certainly learnt myself with a reflective practice is it doesn't end. You know, it's ongoing and it continues. And, you know, I am learning, I'm learning all the time, every single day, you know, whether it's from my clients or from other practitioners, every single day, I'm still learning. So I thank everyone that came tonight, and hope you have a wonderful rest of the week and a wonderful evening full of abundance and flow for yourself.
Thank you, Deb.
You're welcome. And I hope
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're
Thank
welcome.
you very much.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank
That was
you.
wonderful. Really, really wonderful. So thanks so much.
And thanks everyone for attending. It's lovely to see so many faces.
And also don't forget, you'll get 3 points for tonight's presentation. 3. We're giving bonuses because the renewals are due, and we just want to help assist everybody to get them over the line. That's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Fantastic. That's great.
Awesome.
Yes, thanks everyone. And thank you, Debra.
I'm happy to stay back if anyone's got any questions. I'll stay back if anyone's got any questions burning questions. I can't guarantee I can answer them, but I'm happy to stay.
I've got another appointment to go to, so I'll catch up with you again soon.
All right, thanks.
Sue, hi,
Thank
Sue.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
And Debra, you're going to send out a link to this video recording, aren't you, for everybody here, if they want to look at it again?
Absolutely.
And for the people that registered that didn't get to attend, and then Debra's just going to probably get a little questionnaire from them so that she knows they've actually watched it. And that would be wonderful to get the points.
Correct.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.